Unfiltered, uncensored, unprecedented TV. Bit of a glitch in the machine there, but that's live television for you. Welcome to Ascending Order with Basil Valentine. Today, Friday, the 4th of September, 2025. In today's program, I'm delighted to say I'll be joined by Dr. John Loughland, who for the last 4 years has been on the teaching staff of the Catholic Institute of the Vendée in La Roche-sur-Yon in Western France. What a lovely part of the world. And he's also been visiting fellow at the Matthias Corvinus Collegium in Budapest, a well-published and much respected academic. I'll be getting his take on all matters Eurasian, and in particular, of course, the Putin-Xi love-in, to which Kim Jong-un was invited to make a triangle in Beijing over the last few days. What does it mean for the region? Modi was also, of course, there for a while. He seems to be getting close to Putin. Putin far from isolated on the world stage in the way that European leaders, who seem to be at the kernel of the enmity towards the Russian leader, seem to want to represent. On the contrary, a vast military and economic trading bloc is being created in Eurasia, which leaves the United States and Europe, for that matter, a long way behind with their childish posturing. So I'm very much looking forward to talking to John about all that. But first of all, number one story on Ascending Order today is the Epstein situation. The hole is very deep, and it seems people are continuing to dig. Most of all, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie, two Republicans who've been told by Donald Trump it would be a hostile act if they continue to pursue their course of action on behalf of the survivors. First of all, let's get Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking yesterday.
Well, this is there's a clear line right there. And read it and weep. Yeah. Are we supposed to deny what our eyes and ears tell us? And absolutely not. And I want to follow up on something else, Benny. It's not anti-Semitic to talk about this. And it's not anti-Semitic to question any foreign country's government, secular government, including Israel. And I think that's the right thing for people to do, is to always question any foreign government's motives, especially when they come to our country constantly demanding money and demanding help and support. Unfortunately, I don't see enough of the American people in the halls of Congress demanding help and demanding support and demanding funding. But I do happen to see a lot of foreign countries' leaders and diplomats coming to Washington on too frequent of a basis.
Yeah, we fund a lot of other countries' borders better than we fund our own. Is that correct?
Yes, okay. Yes, that's correct. Yes. I have an amendment, actually. I have several amendments going for our NDAA that is being worked on right now. This is our Department of Defense funding, and it's over $800 trillion, actually close to $900 trillion is the total bill. But unfortunately, there's money in there for foreign aid, and I'm introducing amendments to take it out. I'm introducing an amendment to take out the $500 million for Israel. They already receive $3.4 billion annually every single year through the State Department. I've got those same amendments on Taiwan for $500 million and for Jordan for $500 million as well. Those are countries that also receive significant amounts of American taxpayer dollars every single year. And here's a ridiculous one, Benny. There's $15 million in there for AIDS prevention education activities. And I don't know why Americans are having to pay for that in Africa. I think that's ridiculous. And I think if people want to donate money to that themselves, they can, but it shouldn't be in our Department of Defense funding, as well as $118 million for foreign disasters in foreign countries and aid. You know, I think we've had enough of our own natural disasters in America, and that's exactly where our hard-earned taxpayers should be going, not to foreign countries. And that's not being mean to foreign people and foreign countries, but America's broke. We're $37 trillion in debt, and we just can't pay for the world anymore. And that's not being an isolationist. That's actually being smart and serving the people that pay for all of this stuff and have been chained into $37 trillion in debt.
A new alliance seems to be forging in Congress between the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie on the one hand, genuine American firsters, as you could hear there, and some of the more progressive elements in the Democratic Party over the question of Israel and over the question of the Epstein survivors, which should really be a non-partisan issue. We're talking about survivors of sexual abuse and bringing the perpetrators of that abuse to justice. Well, finally, the survivors are getting the chance to speak, and the brother of one of the most high-profile, the woman who was involved with Prince Andrew, who recently committed suicide in mysterious circumstances, Virginia Giuffre, her brother Danny Wilson was speaking yesterday outside Congress.
She fought for every survivor who was silenced, doubted, or discarded. And she never backed down, even when the world tried to break her. Today we rally not only in her memory, but in solidarity with every survivor. We are here to say, we see you, we believe you, and we will not stop until justice is served. Because justice is not selective. It does not and must not bend to money, influence, or titles. We are here because every survivor deserves more than a headline. They deserve more than a single conviction. They deserve the full weight of the law behind them. Our demands are clear. Ghislaine Maxwell must remain in a maximum security prison for the rest of her life. No leniency, no deals, no special treatment. The Epstein documents must be unsealed. Every name, every detail, no more secrets, no more protection for those who preyed on the vulnerable. And finally, we demand full accountability from every enabler, every accomplice, every person in power who turned a blind eye. The justice system was not designed to serve the powerful. It was meant to protect the people. And it's time it started doing just that.
Well, let's wait and see. More documents have been released, but they've been heavily redacted. Of course, the survivors know the names of the people who abused them, particularly if they were famous. So expect to see some names come out in the next few days and weeks, assuming, of course, they live long enough to get those names out. Here's a press conference of some of the survivors yesterday.
So can I get a show of hands? Who here is satisfied with the level of contact they've had from Congress? Nobody. Let me ask this. How about the Justice Department? I want to ask a couple of things about what you knew about things that were happening with this case that you're obviously involved with. Show of hands. Did any of you hear from the Justice Department before they released that memo, that 2-page memo earlier this summer? No hands. Were any of you told that Todd Blanche would be speaking with Ghislaine Maxwell prior to that interview over the course of 2 days?
No.
No. Were any of you told about the prison transfer that Ghislaine Maxwell?
No.
Do any of you feel that the DOJ has communicated with you enough this year?
No.
Have any of you had any communication with the DOJ?
No.
Nobody in this room has heard at all from the Department of Justice?
No.
Is that surprising to you?
No. No.
Yes, it does seem that justice favors the rich and powerful in the United States. I'm afraid to say I think the same thing may be the case here in the UK as well, but that's a story for another day. Thomas Massie is one of the very few Republican congressmen, or Democrat for that matter, not bought and paid for by AIPAC. And of course, we can't ignore the Israel link to Epstein. He's leading the charge on the Republican side to get full disclosure of the Epstein files. And he was speaking yesterday to C-SPAN.
Updates on the discharge petition. Do you think you'll get the number of signatures you need?
I think we'll eventually get there. What people are waking up and discovering right now is the folks who stayed up all night to go through the 34,000 individual pages have found that they're so redacted as to be useless, and that many of them were already available.
Do you think this oversight tactic is releasing these documents? I mean, how do you actually read it? Clearly, they're pushing for more transparency, but it seems like it's not enough for you.
Well, I appreciate the effort that they've undertaken, but the scope of their investigation is to investigate the investigators. Like, they don't ever intend to have any criminal referrals. There may be some notations from the Oversight Committee when this is done that, oh, this FBI person didn't check this box, or this person acted unethically, or this person got too light of a sentence. But they're not going in and trying to identify who these perpetrators were of these heinous sexual abuse crimes.
I wanted to ask which Republicans you think will end up signing onto your discharge petition.
Well, I made the mistake of getting 12 co-sponsors, and so the White House knew who to target, so I'm not going to name anybody who's thinking about joining.
But you're confident you'll get the signatures?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's a strong effort from the White House. They're literally calling it a hostile act to sign this discharge petition now. And I don't know if that's precedented in this country to have a president call legislators to say that they're engaged in a hostile act, particularly when the so-called hostile act is trying to get justice for people who've been victims of sex crimes.
Thomas Massey makes a very good point. Of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene and the survivors of Epstein's sex trafficking ring are knocking on the door of the Oval Office. Marjorie said, I would look forward to talking with President Trump about the women that I've met. I encouraged him already this morning that he should meet these women in the Oval Office. They deserve to be there. They do indeed. Here she is speaking outside Congress yesterday.
Good morning. This is my 5th year in Congress, and this is the largest press conference that I've seen since I've been here. And this is because this is an issue that matters so much to Americans. This is an issue that doesn't have political boundaries. It's an issue that Republicans and Democrats should never fight about. As a matter of fact, it's such an important issue that it should bring us all together. It's grieved me to watch the arguments and debates take place among my colleagues and even the administration. I think this is something that was worth fighting for. You see, the women behind me are going to tell you stories that you've never heard before. These are unimaginable horrors that they've lived with for their entire lives since they were very, very young. But these are also similar stories that many children, teenagers, women, and even men are enduring nightmares right now as we speak. You see, these women have been fighting since the 1990s. I heard one woman tell us yesterday since 1996. And they have carried with them shame. But I want to tell you something. The shame does not fall on these brave, courageous women. The shame falls on every single person that coldly turned a blind eye to their abuse. The shame falls on every single person that enabled it. The shame falls on every single person that took money to continue it. And the shame falls on the people in power over the past several decades that protected the monster, Jeffrey Epstein, and his cabal that continued a nightmare. Those people deserve the shame. And today we are coming forward and we are going to fight like hell for these women, because we have to fight like hell for those that are enduring sexual abuse and are living in a prison of shame. Anyone that is being abused, it is not your fault. You should live with no guilt or fear or shame. All of the fault belongs to the evil people that do these things to the innocent. This is the most important fight we can wage here in Congress, is fighting for innocent people that never receive justice. And the women behind me have never received justice. And do you want to know why? It's because Jeffrey Epstein somehow was able to walk among the most rich, powerful people, not only in America, but foreign countries. Yesterday, I heard countries like Saudi Arabia, Russia, and even Israel, and other countries The truth needs to come out. And the government holds the truth. The cases that are sealed hold the truth. Jeffrey Epstein's estate holds the truth. The FBI, the DOJ, and the CIA holds the truth. And the truth we are demanding come out on behalf of these women, but also as a strong message to every innocent child, teenager, woman, and man that is being held captive in abuse. This should never happen in America, and it should never be a political issue that divides us. And I want to thank Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie for doing something brave, crossing political boundaries for a very important fight. And I'm honored to join both of them. And I'm honored that Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert signed the discharge petition along with myself. And I asked my Republican colleagues not to choose just one path for justice and transparency and accountability, but I asked my Republican colleagues to choose every path for justice and accountability and transparency.
Audrey Taylor Greene really being particularly eloquent there. And of course, the elephant in the room is that the trail of abuse may lead all the way to the Oval Office itself. I'm sure many of you have seen pictures of Donald Trump partying with Jeff Epstein. He claims to have barely known him these days, but then so does everybody that was associated with him. So long way to go in that yet, of course, and the White House have been doing their best to bury the story, saying it's a Democrat hoax, this, that, the other. Well, I'm afraid the cat is gradually coming out of the bag, although, as Thomas Massie said there, the documents that have been released were so heavily redacted as to be useless. Now, is there a line between the Epstein abuse scandal and the number 2 story on ascending order today, which is the horrific murder of Hind Rajab in Gaza over a year ago now? She is the little girl that was trapped in a car with the corpses of her relatives before being pounded herself with no fewer than 355 bullets. Her story is being told in a new film, The Voice of Hind Rajab, which premiered yesterday at the Venice Film Festival, which is in contention for the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival, and which received the longest standing ovation in the history of that, the oldest film festival in the world, as we can hear now from Al Jazeera.
As the credits rolled on screen, the Venice crowd gave a standing ovation. For about 23 minutes, hundreds of people applauded the makers of The Voice of Hind Rajab. A story about the 5-year-old Palestinian girl who was killed by Israeli forces in 2024. The harrowing true story relives the moment Israeli troops opened fire on the vehicle carrying Hind and her family members. Trapped inside, her cousin Layan called for help.
مرحبا عمو. الو مرحبا عمو. الو مرحبا. ايوه بتدخل علينا. الدبابه جنبي. انتوا متخبيين؟ في السياره احنا جنبينا الدبابه. انتوا جوا السياره؟ الو الو.
Hind survived the initial attack and picked up the call. Her last pleas for help recorded for history to remember Israel's brutal genocide. The family car was peppered by more than 300 Israeli bullets. Palestinian paramedics who tried to respond were also killed.
Hind's story is about a child crying out, "Save me." And the real question is, how have we let a child beg for life? No one can live in peace while even one child is forced to plead for survival.
When I heard the first time the voice of Hind Rajab, it was a feeling of helplessness and anger. And I thought that if I do a movie from the point of view of the Red Crescent employee, it will translate my feeling.
Outside the premiere, fans waited on the red carpet to show support for the cast and crew.
It's important to put some light on this kind of stories, to show what's happening in the world, to make people think, reflect.
Through the power of film, the voice of Hind Rajab lives on at the world's oldest film festival. Kaylee Callahan, Al Jazeera.
Don't miss out and get the full picture. Subscribe.
Now, the last few words of Hind Rajab have been particularly well illustrated in an animation. Now, I warn you, this is rather harrowing, but nevertheless, I think it's something we all need to be aware of. So brace yourselves, folks.
حبيبتي طيب انا يا حبيبتي رح اجي اخذك هلا عمو من الهلال عماله عم بنصك عشان احنا نقدر نيجي ناخذك حواليكي في ضرب رصاص خذيني يا حبيبتي والله بدي اخذك بس مش بايدي هلا نحكي بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين برافو عليكي هيك حافظة ميتين وهم هلا معك بالسيارة وين انت هلا محمية بالسيارة بابا جنبية خليكي يا عمري بالسيارة أنا حتمني فاتحة الخط معاكي أتمني أحكي معك ما بدي أسكر التليفون تمام؟
I've seen a post on social media in the last few hours where she says that every time she opens her mouth, blood comes out, and it's upsetting her because her mother will have to clean it. And those were amongst the last words. She said, of course, the evisceration of the Palestinian people, the genocide, is not confined to Gaza. It's also in the West Bank, where there is no Hamas. The Knesset recently passed a resolution declaring the whole of the West Bank being targeted for theft. And that, of course, emboldens the invaders. I would like to use the term settlers. What a euphemism. Settlers and annexation. We're talking about invaders stealing and murdering. Even Sky News has managed to pick up on the pogroms, the murderous rampages being conducted against the indigenous Palestinians on the West Bank, as we can hear in this report.
Along this remote mountain track is a key to understanding the anger gradually ripping apart the occupied West Bank. And the key are these people, Fatima and her mother-in-law Fada.
Hello. Hello.
They live a remote farming life in this makeshift camp, but they are watched and visited every day by Israeli settlers intent on taking this land. It has boiled over many times. Tense confrontations, intimidation, anger. We're blurring the faces of the juvenile settlers, but the menace is clear.
The situation has become extremely difficult, not just for us, but across the whole West Bank. Settlers do whatever they want under the protection of the military, and when the soldiers come, it's just to protect the settlers. It's really bad. At night, we don't sleep. We stay awake waiting for the settlers. 4 or 5 of them come in their cars each night, sometimes on motorcycles, right up to our doorsteps to terrify the children. We sit through the night, afraid they'll set fire to our homes and belongings, trying to force us to flee with our kids.
Every day the settlers come down here from the ridge just up there, sometimes as often as 4 times a day, and they sit on that shelf just above a cave, singing songs, chanting abuse. They're trying to intimidate the family here to leave this land so that the settlers can take it for themselves, and they're acting with impunity. The police won't stop them, and now at least one senior government minister is backing them, saying that Israel should seize all this land, in fact more than 80% of the whole West Bank, and annex it for Israel. This is Israel's far-right finance minister proposing what he calls sovereignty to stop terror, but which many would describe as repressive annexation.
Behind our biblical, historical and moral right to the entire land of Israel, the political and security role of our sovereignty is to ensure that a Palestinian Arab terrorist state is never established in our land.
But fear and mistrust is endemic. A few days ago, a settler was attacked near these olive groves. The Israeli military responded by ripping up thousands of beloved olive trees. Marzouk's great-great-grandfather planted them. Marzouk claims he's a victim of state-sponsored intimidation, but says he feels powerless to resist.
It's only going to get harder. The government is made up of settlers, and they answer to no one, not even the army. When you go to the soldiers who join them, the settlers say, "I'm the judiciary, the police and the army. If you have a problem, go complain to the UN."
While the world watches war in Gaza, the West Bank has been a stage for pain, conflict, fury and misery, and the signs are that it might be about to get even worse. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Al Mukhayir.
Yeah, and what are Western governments doing about it? This is the whole point. It seems the United States is on the brink of abandoning even its pathetic commitment to the two-state delusion. Marco Rubio, the little Cuban-heeled fellow currently masquerading as Secretary of State, has denied visas to Mahmoud Abbas and other representatives of the supine Palestinian Authority, nominally at least the governing body for that area of the West Bank. They're not being allowed to the UN General Assembly in a direct contravention of all the agreements between the United States and the United Nations. And as you heard in that report, the arrogance of the Israeli military saying to the Palestinian farmer whose trees have just been destroyed, go to the United Nations. Right, okay. What are you doing about it, David Lammy? What are you doing about it, Keir Starmer? The answer, of course, is absolutely nothing. The European foreign ministers last week could not even agree the mildest sanctions on Israel as it continues to commit genocide in the rest of Palestine. The only people trying to do anything about it, of course, are the Global Sumid Flotilla, which the other fascist, they're all fascists really, but the other avowedly, openly fascist in the Tel Aviv junta, Ben Gvir, has said he's going to regard as terrorists. So we could see Susan Sarandon, Liam Cunningham, other prominent people being thrown in the Israeli torture gulag, where they love to rape and murder and starve people to death. That might prove an international flashpoint, but we keep thinking that we're going to see international flashpoints that will somehow move the needle, but it seems very few of them do. Greta Thunberg, who I must admit I was not a fan of until very recently, she's on the flotilla. Of course, she went on the first boat, which was, really horribly derided by the likes of Piers Morgan. I mean, how you can poke fun at somebody that's trying to take baby formula to starving children. I've absolutely no idea, but unfortunately, that's the state of the UK media. Now that we're seeing more pictures of starving children, dozens of people in Gaza dying of starvation every day, then it's not quite so politically acceptable to poke fun at the people trying to break the siege. I mean, the whole Overton window of where we are on this conversation is in the pits. We are in hell. And Thunberg herself, of course, is a soft target for defenders of the genocide. But I'm pleased to say she's standing her ground. Here she is speaking from the flotilla, which is now almost in Tunisia, where it's going to be joined by dozens more boats.
I just saw this that says Palestinians in Gaza leave a message on the beach to welcome the global Sumud flotilla. And they're carving in the sand, welcome global Sumud flotilla, break the siege. My message to Gaza is, first of all, I am extremely sorry that the world keeps betraying you, that our governments are still being complicit in the genocide, and that the world is still not hearing your calls to end their complicity. But also, and what is important to emphasize, is that we are millions, if not billions, who are standing with you and who will be supporting you in every step of the way. And this flotilla mission is just one of those examples showing that people are coming together and stepping up when those in power, who are supposed to represent us, cannot even do the bare minimum to uphold international law and prevent the worst war crimes from happening. And I also want to say thank you for showing the world what steadfastness and resilience and resistance looks like, which the people of Gaza now, especially since the escalated genocide, have shown every single day. Yeah.
Melanie Schweitzer is a German lawyer, and she's going to join the flotilla from Tunis. They're all due to set off from there over the next day or two. She pointed out at the press conference in Tunis yesterday how Germany is once again on the wrong side of history.
As being a German, I want to stress this point especially because coming from the country that has committed the Holocaust and that has sworn to the world that never again, we're sitting here again, and Germany is again on the side that is taking part in genocide. An event like this would not be possible in Germany. That is for the reason of state repression, but it's also for the reason of the lack of support from the society. The so-called Global South is leading us at this dire moment of time in humanity. So-called Western states, we see now that they don't have the moral high ground anymore because what they are doing is beyond comprehension. We cannot stand for this. And me saying this coming from Germany now, being in Tunis, it's for us a safe haven to be here because we are persecuted in our own countries. And we cannot understand what our governments are doing. This genocide is being denied while we all can see it with our very own eyes. It's being denied by our Western leaders. We are here to set the record straight, to say that what is happening is not in our name, that our governments do not represent us, and that our governments have failed.
Unfiltered, uncensored, unprecedented TV. And I'm delighted to say for the second part of today's episode of Ascending Order, I'm joined by Dr. John Loughland, all the way from France. Are you still in France, John?
Yes, I am. I'm in the west of France, in the Vendée today.
Oh, you lucky thing. And has term restarted over there?
Yes, it has. I've just given my first lecture of the year.
Very good. Now, momentous events in Eurasia. I want to play this commentary first of all. It seems that Europe and the United States is being left behind by the vast new economic and increasingly military bloc being created all the way from South India through the Urals and across to North Korea. But first, let's hear this overview on the recent events in Beijing from CNN.
A bold show of unity from two of the most powerful leaders in the world. Russia's Vladimir Putin is in Beijing, meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. This morning, Xi referred to Putin as his, quote, old friend, and Putin praised his, quote, dear friend for a summit aimed at deepening their relationship and a much broader alliance between the two countries. The North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un is also there. This is a photo, by the way, of officials greeting him after his arrival from North Korea by train. Kim will attend a huge military parade along with 24 world leaders, including Iran's president. Joining us here in the Situation Room is CNN Global Affairs analyst Kimberly Dozier. Kimberly, thanks very much for being with us. What are China and President Xi Jinping trying to achieve here?
Well, this is a sort of charm offensive, messaging to the whole world that the U.S. is no longer leading the world's global order, that China, backed by these other Eurasian countries, can offer an alternative through the markets, but also diplomatically. And when you think about it, all of the nations represented at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit represent a standing army of about 7 million. So that is a powerful message to send if you are in Africa or Latin America and trying to decide, do I listen to a U.S. diplomat and do business with U.S. companies, or do I listen to the Chinese government and perhaps let them exploit, say, mineral wealth?
Interesting. Just a few hours from now, as you know,
she makes a very good point there that not only is there a standing army of 7 million strong from the Shanghai Cooperation countries, but also that economically they're a significant rival to the United States, which looks like being left behind, John.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of get tired of the superlatives when you contemplate the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and its recent meeting. China is obviously the biggest country in the world by population and probably by economy. Russia is the biggest economy in the world, biggest country in the world by surface area. India is the biggest country, the biggest democracy in the world, and soon to be the biggest country by population. Indonesia is the biggest Muslim country in the world, 250 million people. And indeed, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization itself is one of the biggest, if not the biggest by certain criteria, regional organizations in the world. So, you know, yes, the military and economic weight of this group of nations is absolutely immense. And, you know, people like me have been talking about the emergence of a multipolar world order now for some time. After all, the clip you just played on CNN showing Putin and Xi complimenting each other and saying nice things to each other, this isn't news. You know, they've been visiting each other now for years. I think they've met something like 40 times. Putin obviously has been in power for a long time. And they've been making statements and joint communiques, bilateral ones like this for years and years, explaining, you know, how they see their partnership, explaining how they see their role in the world and so on. The only new thing in this latest thing in Beijing is that they, or rather in one of the provincial cities of China, is that, of course, they are indeed joined by, I believe, 26 other countries, including some of the ones I've mentioned, including very significant countries like Iran and Indonesia, but also even the countries we forget about, like Vietnam, for example. The population of Vietnam is nearly 100 million people. You know, these are, okay, they're probably quite a poor country or whatever, but you know, by no means an insignificant country. And I've mentioned India, the presence of India, the clear complicity and friendship and respect that the Indian Prime Minister.
Absolutely. What? Hold that thought, John. I just want to hear from Vladimir Putin speaking in Beijing.
Yeah.
Well, assessing the work of someone who works for the President of the United States is not my job. It is the job of his employer, President Trump. And I'm convinced that Mr. Witkoff conveys the information in this context with me and with other members of the Russian leadership, that originates from the US president, not anything else. And our talks in Anchorage showed, it was clear from the context of our talks, that information is relayed quite correctly. Our position is conveyed to the US leadership is completely clear to me, and it's something that I saw during our discussions in Alaska. Because the things that we discussed with Mr. Witkoff, all of that was fully confirmed in the presence of President Trump, and he had.
To what extent, John, has Putin been driven into Xi's arms by hostility from the West, from NATO, and in particular from Europe?
Well, yes, but I think this is a very, very old story. You know, it didn't happen yesterday. And the point I was going to make before we had the little clip you've just shown is that I think that notion of being driven into China's arms is much clearer in the case of India than in the case of China. Because I was about to say that we saw Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, Putin and Xi all being pals together. But only the previous week, Trump had slapped 50% tariffs on all Indian imports into the United States, instructing India to stop buying Russian oil. Well, Modi simply stuck two fingers up to Trump and instead went indeed to ally with China. And this is much more remarkable than the alliance with Russia, which goes back many, many, many years and has been deepening now for more than 10 years. And covers a whole range of things, obviously economic cooperation, but also military and other cooperation and political cooperation. Whereas the India thing is more recent and more abrupt because, as everybody knows, India and China have a border dispute. They have a territorial dispute on their border. So pushing people into each other's arms, pushing somebody into each other's arms, into China's arms, I think is extremely clear in the case of India. And of course, again, that is so symbolic, isn't it, of the failure of Western and particularly American policy, because after all, India is supposed to be a democracy. It's supposed to be one of us in the ideological way that the West perceives foreign relations. And yet there we see Modi very, very happy to be with China and Russia.
Indeed, India is a Commonwealth country. King Charles III is still nominally head of state, is he not?
No, India is a republic. So he's not the head of state. Most of the members of the Commonwealth are republics. There are only 14 countries which have the British king as their nominal head of state, but that's not the case of India. But yes, it is a member of the Commonwealth, and of course, everybody knows it has historic ties to Britain and so on. But and after all, we only recently had a prime minister whose wife, who was from himself of Indian parents, and whose wife was from India. So yes, there are links. But my point was really more about the ideology, because what's so striking about this group of nations in Peking is that they are not aligned ideologically. So they have very different political systems. Let's just take Russia, China, and India. China is a one-party communist state. India is a multi-party democracy. And Russia is, well, whatever you want to call Russia, theoretically multi-party and so on, but obviously, very much with a strong presidency and so on. But they have nothing in common politically. If you look at their constitutions and the way they operate, they're totally different. Whereas the Western approach is that you have to be like us. You have to be a liberal democracy. You have to have the same constitutional structure, the same political structure, the same ideological outlook. You have to sign up to LGBT rights and all the rest of it. And that's precisely the difference, that the people meeting in China were doing so, I would say, on a basis of interests, calculated interests, and not on the basis of ideology. And yet in the West, we seem to be driven, in my opinion, only by ideology and not by interest. And in fact, very often our ideology drives us against our own interests. We see this, of course, most strikingly on the energy issue, which again was shown in China this week, because the Russians and the Chinese signed a gigantic pipeline deal, which will take the gas that Europe would have had, the cheap Russian gas, and divert it, instead of it being able to fund German and European industry at low cost, fund Chinese industry at low cost.
Yes, I saw that. I mean, trade seems to be the bedrock really of the Shanghai countries, and indeed the new relationships between India, China, and Russia. And that's where the West is missing out. Trump's got his bonkers tariffs, as you said, which ripped up the agreement with India. And what's more, Europe isn't producing in anything like the extent we used to. I want to put a graphic up here quickly showing how China has progressed economically under President Xi. As you can see there, 2012, a GDP of $8.5 trillion, now almost 5 times that at $41 trillion. GDP per capita has more than doubled. Inflation very steady, down from 2.6 to 2.1%. Gold reserves have increased to $4 trillion. I mean, still nothing compared to the 37 trillion that the United States is in debt. Pensions have shot up, as has average income. Look at that, from 4,000 yen per month to 42,000. And the trajectory is set to continue. I mean, there's a few bumps in the road with the Chinese economy, but I was just watching the other day. They've got shiny new malls with all the major American and European brands for which they make most of the products, bizarrely enough. They might be designed in Europe and the company's headquartered in Europe, but they're made in China. Plus, of course, the railways they've built, John, let's not forget about that. Thousands and thousands of miles of state-of-the-art high-speed railway, whereas in the United States, there's still no railway even to the main airport in Los Angeles.
It takes 7 hours to get from Boston. Takes 7 hours to get from Boston to Washington DC by train.
Exactly, it's absolutely ludicrous. So go on.
No, I mean the economic growth of China over the last 40 or 50 years is absolutely unprecedented in world economic history. You've put up a chart showing the last decade or so. The growth has continued to be spectacular. I don't think at any time in the history of humanity have so many people been lifted out of poverty as recently in China. And you've mentioned the big infrastructure projects, which are incredible. I recently in Russia, or last year anyway, got into a car which I didn't recognize the brand of, super swanky car, unbelievably comfortable, Chinese. They've obviously got the whole Russian market now, which is worth tens of billions. So, I mean, that I think we know that. And indeed, again, it's not news. It's something that's been going on for a very long time, this Chinese growth. But it's not just limited to China. The whole of Asia has been growing like this for decades. To give you an example, which is an example both of the thing I'm talking about, growth, and also of our crazy commentariat. Somebody writing about Trump's 50% tariffs on India, I think it was in The Guardian, wrote last week that this would have an effect on India. Oh yes, then that growth would go in India from 6.5% to 6%. And you just think, how ideologically blind do you have to be to write that in a European newspaper where there isn't a single country in Europe which has growth of 2%, let alone 6 or 6.5%. So, you know, this phenomenon of growth is a pan-Asian phenomenon, and even includes, as I say, a country like India, which, you know, in spite of its size, or perhaps because of its size, of course, is associated generally, at least in people's minds, with great poverty. So, yeah, and you mentioned the design and so on, manufacture. Again, this is something that the Trump administration is trying to reverse with its tariffs and so on. J.D. Vance made a very good speech shortly after he took office, explaining in a few short minutes the mistake, the ideological mistake about globalization. He said that we've always thought that we could be the clever ones doing the designing and the Chinese could make the stuff. But that's not how life works. And very often the people making the stuff are the ones who come up with new designs and so on. And obviously they're trying to repatriate, as we know, industry back to America, including, by the way, from Europe. But in a way, it's too late. You know, this has been going on. This globalization thing has been going on for many decades. Everyone can see Chinese technological advances and perhaps even superiority, and it'll take a very long time to reverse that, if ever. So I think the outlook is very, very grim, really, particularly for Europe, but for the West in general.
John Pilger, of course, predicted many years ago that the United States would seek some kind of military confrontation with China because it cannot accept no longer being top dog. To that end, the Chinese showed off some of their hardware in the parade in Beijing the day before yesterday. We're just going to have a very quick look at some of this footage, John. Now, recent parades have demonstrated their long-range missiles and drones. Apparently, the keynote on this one was a battle readiness, that they're ready to go at the drop of the hat and employ these, as we saw there, you know, precisionally orientated and unbelievably well-organized forces.
Yeah, well, I mean, I watched some of those images as well, and I'm sure, like everyone, I was struck not just by the military hardware, which we assume, I'm not a military expert, but which I assume is indeed very, very high performance, but also, of course, by the military precision of the marching. I mean, and the sheer scale of the thing, you know, I mean, let's not forget, we all know this, but let's not forget that China is 1.2 billion people. That's 1,200 million people. Okay, you take a big country like Indonesia, 250 million people. China is 1,200 million people. So I don't know what the size of the Chinese army is, but I would have thought they would find it pretty easy to put 1 million or so soldiers into the field. These are figures that nobody in the West can come anywhere close to. Even the Russians, who only have 140 million or so citizens, have managed to put 500,000 people into the field in Ukraine, 500,000, the size of the entire American active army. Europe is talking about sending troops into Ukraine, Britain and France. They can't put, they maybe can put 10, 15, 18,000 people. This is peanuts. So, you know, this talk that you asked me about in your question about going to war with China, which, by the way, the European officials like Kaja Kallas have also echoed. I just don't know what planet these people are on. It's a bit like the thing with Indian growth. You just wonder, you know, have they got some very severe cognitive dissonance? And anyway, what war? I mean, what are we talking about? They always go on about Taiwan, but they themselves, these American and European governments, accept that Taiwan is part of China. There's never been a recognition, and Taiwan itself doesn't claim to be an independent state. Both Taiwan and mainland China claim to represent the whole of China. So they're not even coherent with their own legal positions, their own political and legal positions. And anyway, I don't know Chinese politics particularly well, but I think China is surely much more in the waiting game, in waiting for the ripe fruit to drop comfortably into its lap, than in the game of some kind of takeover of the island of Taiwan, and which would involve urban warfare and all the rest of it. I find that scenario rather difficult to imagine.
Well, I mean, that's been on the back burner for decades, hasn't it? And I don't see any reason why it should flare up, particularly over the next few months. But European leaders seem to want to get at China via Russia, the demonization, not just of Putin, but the entire Russian people because of the special military operation in the Ukraine. They see as the Achilles heel for the NATO-Sino-Russian axis.
Yeah. Well, Kaja Kallas, again, to mention her again, she has said we have to defeat Russia in order to go on to defeat China. And, you know, once again, I'm afraid we are... What?
It's insanity. I mean, to
It's
talk like that,
insanity, and it's very, very severe levels of incompetence because, as you suggested in an earlier question, they themselves have created, or helped to create anyway, the Sino-Russian axis. They've now added India to that, and this alliance, by the way, which basically is an alliance now. I mean, it may not be set in stone. It's probably an advantage actually, because I think that our own rigid structures are to our detriment in the West. But this tripartite alliance, which also has these other countries gravitating around it, Iran, Indonesia, Vietnam, North Korea, and so on, you've basically got the whole of the Eurasian continent covered, except of course for Western Europe, which is a little tip of this vast landmass. And back in the 1990s, the American statesman and political thinker Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote in a book that many people have heard of, The Grand Chessboard, in 1996, I think, or 97, that American geopolitical strategy was based on dividing Eurasia. America is an island, if you like, separated by the ocean from this world island. And in order to dominate Eurasia, it has to divide it. And in order to divide it, it has to have little points where it controls. And he lists all these, and obviously Western Europe is one. Then you have others in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and so on. Then on the rim, you have Japan and all the rest of it. So he went into all this in a very geopolitical way. And then he says in this very book, he says, but if the two big actors should one day get together, in other words, Russia and China, and if they were to be joined by another country like Iran, he doesn't even mention India, by the way, but even in the scenario of a Russian-China alliance, helped by perhaps another big country like Iran, he said then American hegemony would be at an end. Well, now it's come to an end even more spectacularly, as I say, with with the de facto inclusion now of India in this alliance.
So how is the United States going to react? We've got an increasingly, well, people say ill Donald Trump, that he may actually even be on the way out. $37 trillion in debt, and a Europe which is, apart from anything else, John, as we've referenced already, is just led so appallingly badly by the dreadful von der Leyen and Callas. I mean, when you look at the lineup of Western leaders, Trump, Starmer, Callas, Merz, von der Leyen, Macron, the caliber of leadership in the West to come up with constructive responses, which must surely involve trade and détente and trying to create a peaceful, prosperous world for all. It's just not there. The Western countries are dominated by security services, it seems, who have their own entirely hidden agendas.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't put Trump in the same category as the others. I agree with you wholeheartedly about Starmer and Macron and Merz and so on. Trump has plenty of faults and may not be able to achieve his stated goals. But America has, in comparison to Europe anyway, very substantial advantages. Certainly a very big internal market, a world reserve currency, at least for the time being. But a pretty good record in certain areas. I mean, you know, America's in decline, yes, but every single high-tech thing in the world, like Google, Facebook, Meta, Apple, all these things have come from America, all right? So America is not over. Europe is over. And we in Europe, I'm in France, you're in Britain, the debt situation is completely out of control. The French government is due to collapse on Monday, on the 8th of September. France is incapable of getting its budget under control, its state spending under control. The political crisis has been dragging on now for over a year in France. It seems to be intractable. Britain, in some ways, is in a worse situation. Britain borrows £150 billion a year and spends 110 or more of that on interest payments. So Britain is edging close to default, as is France. And unlike the United States, it doesn't have a reserve currency. It doesn't really have any industry left. It has much higher energy costs. Energy costs are twice the price of in Europe as they are in the United States or in Asia. So and of course we have then, as you say, this absolutely sclerotic leadership. Trump, at least, for all his faults, which are numerous and there for all to see, and maybe indeed he's ill, at least he has a certain pizzazz, he has a certain ability to take decisions and so on, or seems to have, at least to conceive decisions, whether or not he can execute them. But none of that applies to any of the European leaders who, on the contrary, are, as we've said, trapped in cognitive dissonance and, above all, very, very incompetent.
Absolutely. But at least in France, John, you do have the best boucherie, charcuterie and pâtissier in the world. And
yes.
long may they continue, at least. I hope they provide some comfort to you. Dr. John Lofton, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
On Unprecedented TV.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
There he goes. That's Dr. John Lofton. I'm Basil Valentine. I'll be back at the same time tomorrow. See you all then.
Unfiltered, uncensored, unprecedented TV.